Hey everyone, it's me again, Mitsuko Ono, and for today I will be talking about storytelling in AR. And most specifically, I will be talking to you about my most recent effect, Got Your Nose, and I will be going through my project file. And for those of you who don't know or haven't seen this effect, this is the one I'm talking about. So for this kind of effect, the most difficult part is actually making the story. I will show you my project file a little later, but it's actually just very easy. It's just a little bit, I don't know, tedious because of like so many things going on, but it's really very easy. But first you have to like get your story down, and then you might have this, I don't know, grand story in your mind, like how I start with when making this kind of effect. So first I have like a rough story, and then I write it down somewhere on a piece of paper on your iPad, type it somewhere, and then you have to break it down into scenes. But when you have like a story in your mind, you also have to take into account the kind of assets that you will be needing. So you at first you might like think like, oh, I have this very interesting story that needs all of these 3D assets or 2D assets, but you have to think if all of those assets will fit in your project file, because if not, then it's going to be meaningless. And what if like you already started to make like your effect, and then you've already like, imported all of your assets, and then you finished making everything just to find out that you can't export it because you're way over the limit. So what I will suggest first is to like really plan out your story and plan out the assets that you will be needing. So for example, with my effect, like I have so many scenes. I think I got about eight. Yeah. So I have eight scenes, but I just used very few assets. So for example, this one, in this scene, I have just this hand and just my nose and this rope and just some 2D assets. For the next scene, I have just a duplicated like 3D booger man. So it's really just super simple. I don't have a lot of 3D assets here. It's mostly just like I'm thinking about how you can like expand what you can do with one asset. So you can have maybe just a few assets, but different, like several scenes to create your story. So for this scene, I only have this Booker Man, some like what do you call this, particles, so the clouds and the rain. And then for the third scene, I still have this Booger Man. For the fourth scene, it's just the rope again. So this rope is the same rope that I used for the first part. And then still the rain, it's still like the clouds. And then the next scene, it's still this one. So it's still the hand, my nose, and the rope. And then the next scene, so it's just this booger man again, and some clouds, and my nose. And then for the last part, it's just again the booger man. So that's what I would recommend for you to do. Like you take one asset and make sure you use that same asset in several scenes so that you can really optimize your effect. So before we start, I would just like to say a little disclaimer that I won't be showing you how to make this effect from scratch, but I will be showing you my project file and I will go through everything step by step, scene by scene of how I made this effect. Okay, so this is the project file that I was telling you about. I didn't expect that I would be making a tutorial for this one, so I didn't clean up my patch editor. So it looks like this. I'll show you like how messy it is if you don't use like senders and receivers. So yeah, it's a mess. So first I will be cleaning this all up, even if just a bit, so I can like explain it properly, like step by step how I made everything. So I'll be back, just wait. Okay, so now I'm back and I fixed my patch editor so it's not as messy as before. And now it looks like this. It's a bit organized, and later I will show you more about how I did everything. But first, I will show you how my viewport looks like, how the effect looks like in 3D space versus how it looks like on your phone. Okay, let me just set this up first. Okay. So if you've noticed, the camera or the device just stayed right here the whole time. It doesn't move because we cannot animate the device or the camera. So what we do is to animate the whole scene instead to give it the illusion that we are moving our camera. So how we do that is to create a lot of nulls, like one null for every scene, or it's up to you how you want to do it. But what I did was when I already had my story, I separated them into scenes, and then I planned what assets I need for every scene, and then as you can see here in my scene panel, I have nulls for every scene that I have, and all the assets that I need are inside of them, and they are animated. And I use this visibility patch for the nulls, so I can like control when the scene is visible or not. So nulls are very useful to, of course, organize all your assets. So it's not like all your assets are here under your focal distance and it's just so messy. If you don't use nulls, it's going to be like super disorganized and you will be confused all the time, and maybe you you won't be able to finish your effect if you have so many scenes. So my first advice is to use nulls to organize your scenes, and of course to like fake animate the camera. So what we do is, yeah, like we animate the the nulls. You can animate the position, the rotation, the scale, to give it the illusion that you're they call this animating the camera instead. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is I don't know if everyone here is familiar with video editing, but when you're editing something, when you have like a story that you want to like fit together, sometimes you would need like transitions, and you can just make scene 1 visible, scene 2 invisible, and then just switch the visibility. But sometimes it's also fun to make like transitions. So this is what this canvas, to call this layer is for. So I have this rectangles here, and some of them are just for the background, and some of them are for my transitions. So I'll show you here. Where is it? Yeah, I have uh like a wipe, like a transitional wipe. So I animate them using SDFs, and like I animate also the opacity to create a transition for my scenes. So with this kind of effect, a storytelling effect, it's not really that difficult to make. It's not really super complicated, but the only patches you will mostly use are animation, transition, senders, and receivers. You can survive with only these patches, and I think you just have to be organized so that you can keep track of what you are doing, what scene you are like currently making, so that you can connect them seamlessly. So I will show you more about how I did everything, but first let's talk about like more tips on how to like optimize your effects. So as you can see right here, I only have some 3D assets, and they are all like what do you call this? I forgot that term. Low poly. So most of these assets, 3D assets that I have are low poly. And then I just have some other like 2D assets here, like a fog sprite, like for my clouds, like rain sprite, my cloud sprite. Oh no, my fog sprite is for my fog. My cloud sprite is for my clouds. And then just some more 2D assets here. And I make sure to go into Photoshop and just lower the DPI. So sometimes you import an asset and it's so big because you forgot to lower the DPI in Photoshop. So sometimes it's 300 when you don't really need 300 DPI for anything digital. You can just get it down to 72, and you don't need like really high res photos inside of Spark. I usually keep my assets to less than maybe 700 by 700 pixels. So sometimes it's just like 250 by 500, 500 by 500, or something like that. And then if you have some animation in your 3D assets, I recommend that if it's too, what do you call this? If it's like a difficult type of animation that you cannot do inside of Spark, then maybe you can keep it like as is, like bake into your 3D asset. But if it's really just a simple animation, I recommend that you do it inside of Spark, because I realized before that I had like a 3D asset that I wanted to import, but it was so big that I wouldn't have space for anything else, because even though that it's low poly, it had like several different animations. So what I did was I deleted all of the animations and I imported it back to Spark, and it became really small. And I mean the size became really small, and then I just did all of the animations inside of Spark, and I saved a lot of space, so I could import more assets, I could add more elements into my effect. So you can really make use of your animation patches here, or even a loop animation, to like really save some space. So I think it's you should take that into consideration as well, the animation, when coming up with your story, because if you have a lot of like, if you have like big files, it's it's okay if that's really your plan. But if you want to have like several more elements in your effect, then it might be better to just have like simple animations, and just add more to the scene, like some elements to the scene. But if your animation is like the focus, then maybe you can just like focus on that. But it's just a tip that I wanted to like share with everyone. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about are sender and receiver patches. You will be needing these because with this kind of effect, you will have a lot of like connecting to do, especially if you have a lot of scenes. Like earlier when I showed you my patch editor, it was really so messy because I didn't use senders and receivers. I just tried to connect everything like from this point to like this point, and everything was super messy. So even I had like a difficult time organizing my own patches. But now I included senders and receivers so that I don't have all those webs anymore, and it's really easier to organize if you have those. And also it's easier if you like organize your patches inside of these comment boxes. You can like easily see where your scene ends and where another scene begins. And so if you want to change something, or if you test your effect and something is not working, you won't have to look for like one specific patch in like a web of patches. You can just see, like for example, when you look into your, what do you call this one. If you look into this one and when you test your effect, and then oh, scene 3 has a bug or something, or something is not working correctly, so you can just like go to like the set of patches where your scene 3 is, and you can find out like where exactly something goes wrong. So that's another tip that I wanted to share with everyone. Okay, so let's start with the first scene. So what I like to do first is I get the camera patch, and I just create this system where it allows the user to press record to start the whole effect. I like doing this one because if I just use like a screen tap to trigger the effect, and then at the end of that, the user has experienced the whole effect, but at the end they don't have anything. But if they press record, and then at the end they have this recorded video that they can choose to post or not, but you have like more chance to post it because they already have it at the end. And I like doing this because I want to get their original initial reaction to the effect rather than having to do it again. So yeah, that's why I like doing this. But for now, I just use the screen tap so we can test it in the simulator. But usually I just connect this here. Okay. So let's see how our first scene starts again. Let's just refresh this and play. So what happened is that an arm became visible and got the nose of the user, and then the nose came back with the hand, and then some text appeared, and then the user lost their nose, and like a transition appears, this one at the center. So I created the sender for this for the video recording output, but now it's a screen tap patch. But this sender will be used throughout the effect. So throughout also the patch editor, we are going to be needing it to first trigger our first animation, and then I also like to use this one to reset all the animation patches that I have. So I told you that this whole effect can be done by using just an animation patch and a transition patch, right? And actually this animation patch is very powerful because it can allow you to do several animations for one asset, and this completed output is really very useful to trigger another animation to start, or to trigger another thing to just do something. So for example, to hide an asset, make an asset visible, or do something else. So for those of you who are just like beginners who don't know how to make several animations inside of Spark onto a single asset, well, this is how you do it. So like in my first scene, the perfect example for this is this arm that goes inside to reach the user's nose, and then goes back outside of the frame of the scene. So if you're just a beginner, maybe you know how to make it appear but don't know how to like make it come back. So how you do it is like this. Let's get an animation patch, a transition patch, and let's just duplicate this. And then if you want a little like weight in between these two animations, you can add another animation patch, or you can use delay, but I don't know, I like to use the animation patch because it's easier to reset, and then I don't know, I just feel like it's more secure than using a delay patch for animations, of course. So what you do is, for example, you have the trigger here, right? So you connect it to this play, and then you just connect your progress here. So imagine we have like a what do you call this? A plane here in our scene panel. So imagine we have a plane, or let's just create one. Here. So we have a plane, and then let's just get the scale. So for example, we want this plane to have a bigger scale, sum from 0 to 5, and then 5 to back to 0 again. So what we do is let's change the n to 5. So this set of patches will make the plane scale from 0 to 5, but it ends with that. But if you want to make it 5 to 0 again, what you do is to connect. Let's first disconnect this one. First, let's connect the completed patch here onto play, and then let's change the duration to maybe 5 seconds. This acts like a delay, remember, and then after this has completed, we'll trigger another animation to set the plane scale back to 0. So how do you do that? Instead of connecting it here, we connect it to the start here. So we'll just change the end values back to 0, and then lastly connect this one here. So what will happen is with the duration of 1 second, the plane's scale will start from 0 to 5, and then it will wait for 5 seconds, and then after that the plane scale will go right back to 0 from from 5. So that's basically how you make several animations for one asset. Feel free to add more if you need more animations. You can do this whole system again and again. So that's what I did with my arm here. And then it just triggers a lot of animations after that. So that is what happens really in this whole effect. It's just triggering animations one after the other. As you can see, it triggers like visibility patches of other assets, and these are just, what's this? Let's delete that. These are just the animations of the fingers when it grabbed the nose. So what else? This is for the joints of the rope that that's attached to the nose. I don't know if you noticed it, but let's check again. These are the joints that I was talking about. Let's refresh. And then I don't know if you noticed the joints that were like unraveling, quote unquote unraveling. It's, I think, also like the little things in your effect that makes up this whole story as well. So it might not like have like a big impact overall, like those little stuff, but it's what makes your scenes, I don't know, seem more cohesive with one another. And then I have the text, like the got your nose text here. So again, it's just like one animation patch to the other. I also use it to call this, to hide or make to call this textures visible by playing with opacity. And then as you can see, I have more senders here because this helps with, for example, if you're planning to add audio later on in your project, you need to make like signals when to trigger an audio. So instead of like going back later to figure out where you're gonna put your audio, it's best if you already have these senders. So later you can just like have your little spot here to add all your audios and stuff. So I'm not going to like explain all of these step by step, but you can see it's just an animation patch over and over again. Animation transition, mix, it's it's really everything that you need. And then you can also just play around with like loop animation. For example, for the whole for my got your nose text, it was wiggling, right? So I just used a loop animation to like animate the wiggling part. So yeah, this is the first scene of my effect. Okay, so now let's talk about the second scene. Let's just play that again so we can refresh our memory. Happens. So we have that transition. This whole thing moves, and then that's it. So first we had that wipe transition, and then so it's just an SDF circle that I animated, and then after that I just turned off the visibility of the first scene, which is this part, and then I made triggers to play the sound effects that we have there. And then I showed the background for the second scene, which is just black. And then remember when I was talking to you about the animation of the whole scene, to make it look like you're animating your camera. So this is what I was talking about. So I have this whole scene here for the second part, which is just like the booger sitting down, lining up, and then they're just shivering. And so this whole scene is animated to like kind of zoom in. So that's what we have here. And at the last part we have like a really kind of more how do you call this, like a harsher zoom, to zoom in on the face of the like meditating booger. I don't know, I named it like that. So it was that like the last booger human meditating at the back. And then again, I'm just using all animation patches here. And then what's also great about using animation patches is that while for example, this set of animation patches are like being completed, I have this another animation patch here, and then I can make another type of animation, and then I can just adjust the duration. So for example, I don't have to put this whole animation here. I can just separate it and then adjust the duration so it matches I don't know, the timing of when I would like it to play. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I do sometimes. So it may get kind of confusing, but if you need to adjust some, what they call this, timings, that's what I can also suggest, is that you make a separate kind of animation set of animation patches, so it's easier to adjust in the future. So I just have some other like triggers, like senders and receivers that I made, so I can trigger some sound effects and some animations later on in my scene. Okay, so now let's go to the third scene. So what I have on my third scene was the booger people chanting "pull, pull, pull." So let's just play that again. First scene, second scene, third scene. So I just have this like receiver here that says scene 2 finish, so it's a trigger to start the third scene. So we just have this subtle, very subtle rotation of the whole scene here. And then I just have this like booger people come up one by one. They're really not really invisible throughout the whole effect. They're just under the camera, so it won't be seen. So you can also do that. It's one way of just maybe lessening your workload. You can hide everything like under this like a place where the camera sees. So I just have this like a bunch of animation patches here that starts when another one completes. And then I just have a loop animation here for their arms when they chant the pull, pull, pull. And basically that's it. And then when all of them has already finished animating from the bottom to the top, I have this other sender here. So I can use this sender in another part of my effect. Okay, so now we're at scene 4. So basically this is just the whole fourth scene. So I have this trigger here that says that that pull 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 scene is finished. So once that is finished, I will hide the whole third scene and make the fourth scene visible. And then I have this animation patch here that says pulling time, and then I just put the duration 4 because that's like I think the whole time that scene takes place. And then I have here another loop animation for the whole scene that makes it rotate. And then the rest here is just a loop animation for the booger people that are pulling the rope. So it's just an animation of their joints, the shoulders, the neck, their hips, and then it's just that. It's so scene 4 is kind of really simple. It's basically just looping the rotation and the animation of the joints. So for the fifth scene here, we just have to put the nose back like this. So first, after the pulling scene, we play this animation, which is putting back the nose. So this is the position of the nose in z-axis, and then it just goes back with the arm. And then this is just the animation of the fingers. So when it puts back, the joints move. And then we have this sender here. So it acts as a trigger that the nose is placed back to the original position. And then after that, the separated nose will become invisible, and the face without the nose. And then just a normal face will become visible. So that's it for the fifth scene. It's really super simple. And then next, we'll go on to the sixth scene. So now we're at scene 6, which starts with a transition. And then this happens. And then another transition towards the end. So first I use an STF circle. For the transition, I animated the opacity and the radius. And then I have like a sender for when this whole transition finishes. And then when it's finished, I make the scene 6 visible and also the background, which is the sky. And if you're wondering what this cube is for, so when the nose was placed back into the user's face, I made the cube invisible again, and because the cube acts as an occluder for the rope, because if I don't put an occluder for the rope, if the user's head like moves, you can see the rope. So that's one like tip you can use for your projects. You can use just a cube or a sphere to hide some objects that you don't want to be seen. And then what else? We have some senders and receivers here to trigger animations again. And then this one is to hide the fifth scene when scene 6 starts. And then we have this animation for the position of the whole scene. So again, we can't animate the camera, so we'll animate the whole scene instead. So this is the null. I just animated the position. What else is here? This is just the animation for the characters in this scene. So I animated the neck. If you see some booger people, they're like just tilting their heads from left to right, and then just animating the position, their joints. These are just loop animations, so those are very easy. And then what else? I just animated this. You saw the meditating booger at the end, and then it flies into the nose, which is the sun. So it's just animation patch after animation patch. I just really use this completed output all the time to trigger animations. And basically that's it for our scene 6. So now we're at scene 7, and the previous scene ends with a white transition, and it just shows this booger human head peeking out from the nose. So we just have this. I have this turn off the sky and scene 6 sender, and it's actually connected to this scene 6. So it turns off the sky when the transition is finished, and then I just show my scene 7 null here, and then there's not really much anything going on here. It's just like peeking out of the nose. So I just give it a few seconds until it turns black at the end here. And that's just the last part. I just switch the visibility to on of these assets right here, and that's the end. Another thing I wanted to talk about is that when making a storytelling error effect, or maybe any effect for that matter, if you have like lots of scenes or assets that you want to put in your scene, remember to put them in layers, because layers will really help you organize your scenes, which one you want to show first, and then it won't be messy here in your simulator, because sometimes if you don't have your layers organized, like the assets that you have will be on top of each other, or when you're moving something looks wrong. So I suggest that if you're dealing with so many assets in your effect, that you organize them into layers. So that is it with my got your nose effect. I know it looks long and complicated, but it's really not. It's just a bunch of animation patches connected to each other. And I just wanted to recap what we've talked about in this tutorial. So for organizational purposes, use nulls to organize your scenes. You can use layers also to organize your assets and how it will look like on your phone or the simulator. Use nulls to fake animate your camera. You can use transitions as well. To do that, you can animate the opacity of a plane or a rectangle, or you can use SDFs to create some kind of transitional wipe. You can use senders and receivers to connect like triggers from like one place in your patch editor to another place. It will also help you to sort out your, what do you call this, your sound effects later. So for example, you wanted to add like a very specific sound effects for every action that is happening in your effect. It would be easier to do that if you already set up your senders and receivers, and do all your animations inside of Spark if possible to save space. You and for transitions, you can also just set the visibility patch to either like to show or to hide. You can enclose also your patches within comments so that you won't be lost later on if you want to make edits. And I think that's it. Just remember to optimize, 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 so you don't get such a big file when you're trying to submit your effect later on. That's it. I hope you learned something from me today, and thank you for coming.